On behalf of Lewis Academy Now and the Thomas Jefferson Alumni Action Group, or TJAG, thank you for joining us and welcome to the See It, Be It speaker series. Lewis Academy Now and TJAG are thrilled to present this programming together as two organizations striving towards equity in education here in Fairfax County and beyond. TJAG is a group of more than 1,000 TJ alumni that seek to enhance accessibility, inclusion, and innovation within STEM education in order to develop well-rounded and ethical 21st century leaders. Lewis Academy Now is an independent organization recently formed to make sure that Fairfax County establishes an academy for government, public policy, and human rights at John R. Lewis High School. We represent hundreds of community members, parents, students, and Lewis High School alumni. Academies in Fairfax County public high schools offer specialized courses that combine academic and career preparation. The Lewis Academy would be a nonpartisan program designed to encourage civic engagement and develop student awareness of the processes of change through various forms of federal, state, and local government. But enough about us. Let's get started. Tonight's conversation is available in English and Spanish. To hear the Spanish interpreter, look for the globe icon along your bottom menu and select your preferred language. It's just right next to the Q&A button. We'll be recording tonight's discussion as well, and though your fellow audience members won't be visible, your questions will be recorded. In addition, you'll want to get a smartphone or similar device handy towards the end so you can join in the game of Kahoot, which will be explained later. And without further ado, please welcome Makia Little, co-chair of the See It, Be It speaker series and president of TJAG.
Thank you so much, Esther. We are really excited tonight to have with us Mr. Antonio Tijerino. Tony, thank you for joining us today. I'm sure our students are anxious to learn more about you. So can we start off by having you tell us about your childhood, where you grew up, and where you attended high school?
Sure. It's a pleasure to be here. And I just have to tell you, I'm very grateful to have people like Esther in my life, who I've known for a very long time, and now all of you in my life. And I love that this is named after John Lewis, who was an absolute beacon of light for anyone that believes in justice. I remember going down to the border to address the issue of the families being separated along the Texas-Mexico border, and John Lewis actually came with me on one of those trips. And nobody got down more for anyone that was being mistreated than John Lewis. And so the fact that his spirit is a part of all of this is even more compelling for me to be humbled to play a role here. So I actually was born in Nicaragua, Managua, Nicaragua, in Central America, and came up to the United States with my dad, who got a job here. What was interesting is the day after I got here, I was in first grade. No pre-K, no kindergarten, no learning English, just went right into first grade. And for a whole year, I didn't say a word because I didn't speak the language. But I remember teachers would pinch me to try to get a sound out of me because they thought I was mute, or they actually held me back. And you know, the kids had to adjust to me being so different at a time there weren't many Latinos in the greater DC area. I moved into Tenley Circle, was the first place we lived. And it's something that was a defining moment because being made fun of for something that you don't know, but something that you do know is really something that you like to think that people would grow out of and adjust, considering 1 out of 4 students around the country are Latino and might have an accent. But it's interesting that our councilwoman in Montgomery County just last week was at a council meeting talking about equity in the vaccine rollout for the county. And there were people from the county, officials, that were making fun of her accent while she was speaking, and they got caught on Zoom because they didn't turn their mics off. So how I felt in grade school, at least they were grade schoolers making fun of me. They weren't grown people that were part of the county officials that were making fun of an actual council member, especially the first foreign-born, the only female counselor, and the first ever Latinx counselor, council person for Montgomery County. So, but I adjusted and they adjusted, and then everything was better.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that memory and experience with us. I can't imagine walking in your shoes and having that be so part of your introduction to this country. So you pretty much stayed in this area for your educational experience, correct?
Yes, it was an interesting time though, because right after grade school, when I was in high school, just like some of the people in the audience right now, there were some circumstances where my parents were having a really difficult time and were breaking up. And part of that was that my dad just said, I'm going back to Nicaragua without any of us knowing it. So my mom and sister actually got deported to Paraguay, where they were from. And my brother and I had to go to Nicaragua with my dad. And this is after we are now Americans, essentially, even though we weren't citizens, but we had grown up here, you know, from the time I was 6 years old. Now I was 15. For those 10 years, my Spanish was worse than my English, and we had totally adapted. And now we were being sent back to Nicaragua, and then Civil War broke out. So we got sent back to the United States under very different circumstances, where we didn't have our legal status. We didn't have any parents around. It was me at 15, my brother was 14. And we were sent to the middle of Illinois in a rural area that, again, no Latinos that I could identify were around. There wasn't a diversity. I mean, we were in Washington, D.C., and so there was a huge African-American population. None of that existed where we ended up. And it didn't quite work out with the family that we were going to be taken in by, because in those days, you couldn't just text someone and say, hey, my kids are showing up. You just kind of showed up. So even now, when you talk about the families that are being unified, or the unaccompanied minors that are coming to our borders for a better life and to escape horrible violence and oppression, that reunification piece is not as easy as it sounds on both sides. So it all through high school, it was just my brother and I, and a lot of times we slept in the car or slept at friends' houses. And then a very nice couple, the parents of a young woman that I was dating at the time, took us in. And we had a wonderful experience for our senior years, where it felt pretty normal, and then made my way back to the DC area and went to University of Maryland.
That's fascinating. So being that you had such a diverse experience as far as locations and dealing with different things, you know, in your teen years, what did you want to pursue when you grew up? Like what was your what thoughts and dreams were rolling in your head at that time?
So first, I just want to take a step back. It was a very positive experience to be in an area that I wouldn't have had exposure to, especially now, where there's so much division within different groups. For me to have a little bit of insight into the a community that's outside of my own, and so being in an area that was rural with people that didn't necessarily look like me or sound like me or think like me, has been a very, very informative aspect to my experiences that hopefully gives me a better understanding in terms of being able to communicate with people to be able to move forward in a more cohesive way. So I just want to take a step back and say that it was actually a very positive thing that I ended up where I ended up. Like everything in life, you know, you're there for a reason. And the other part of it was that I remember when I was a kid, I used to really think about the kids that somebody would ask them what they wanted to be and they had an answer. I never really had an answer because I didn't quite know what I wanted to do. But I remember reading the book, All the President's Men. and when I was a teen. And I said, well, there's an answer I can give. I was really fascinated by the role of a reporter to be able to take down a presidency, to be able to inform the public about what was really happening, and to be able to expose things that were negatively happening. And I love the credo of the journalists, which was to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comforted. That really spoke to me. So that's why I went to the journalism path. And from the time I was in high school, after reading that book, I had an answer when somebody said, "What do you want to do?" And I was like, "I want to be a journalist. I want to write. I want to have an impact. I want to be able to afflict the comfort and comfort the afflicted." So it was a path that I was inspired by all the President's Men. I remember very specifically.
I'm really glad you mentioned, your desire for impact, because I feel like that's really what public policy is all about. It's the ability to dream of a world or a country that can be better and have that impact. So prior to joining the Hispanic Heritage Foundation, you worked for quite a few impressive organizations. Can you tell us a little about your previous employers and what attracted you to each of them?
Yeah, I mean, I think the main thing was that I was fortunate to end up in a place where I had the opportunity to learn in these positions. But it wasn't something that I thought of. I didn't have any mentors. I didn't have any guidance. My brother and I were on our own from the time I was 15 and he was 14. And so it really was just landing somewhere and being open to landing. Inspiration can come out of anywhere at any time. Our job, I think, is to be prepared to be inspired and to take chances. What I found out, though, was in these, working for the largest PR company and public affairs company in the world, Burson Marsteller at that time in the 90s, and then Cohen & Wolf, and then Nike, which was a great company, moved out to Oregon to work there and was traveling all over the world and dealing with sports, but also public policy and public affairs, and then ending up at Fannie Mae, where I met Esther. And then after that, I've been at this job, the Hispanic Heritage Foundation, for the last 20 years. But here's what's interesting. You figure out at some point the value that your value proposition that you're offering. And you don't quite figure that out if you don't take a traditional path to get there. I was in a room with a lot of gray-haired white guys in gray suits. And I remember thinking, what do I have to offer here? And they didn't make me feel like I had anything to offer. But very quickly, I figured out they're not very creative. They don't have that much common sense. They don't really know the communities that they're supposed to be experts in reaching. And so I was able to provide a perspective. And I want to make sure that all of the young people that are on this call understand. They need your perspective more than you need theirs. I would rather invest in a 16-year-old than a 60-year-old. And when people say, do you have advice for millennials and Generation Z? No, I get advice from Generation Z and millennials, because it's really important that you understand. If you're in a room, you're there for a reason. You're there to have a voice. You're there to give a perspective. Don't ever feel like you're lucky to be anywhere. You're there for a reason. And with that comes a responsibility and a megaphone. And it's always important to understand too, you represent everyone that's not in that room, whether you like it or not. If you are Black, Latinx, Asian, female, LGBTQ+, if you're disabled, you represent everyone that isn't in that room, whether you like it or not. They're going to see you as a representation of everyone. And there's a big, heavy responsibility that goes along with that. And it's even more important to know that you don't have to be Black to stand up against racism. You don't have to be a female to stand up against sexism or homophobia or anti-Semitism or Islamophobia, making fun of the disabled. You have a responsibility to speak for who's not in that room. And I take that very, very personally across everything that I've ever done. And you know, a lot of that starts at our dinner tables with our own families. There's nobody more racist than a Latino. And you have to be able to call out your own community before you look at other communities. And we should have a roadmap as to how we don't want to treat people from the way we don't want to be treated. But it's important that we look at that in our own communities and call out homophobia and sexism and everything else. Every chance you get, just try to do it politely, because we're trying to educate people. Our job isn't to castigate. Our job is to enlighten, to illuminate, to educate. And then at some point you can get frustrated and not be so nice, but see where it takes you.
So thank you for reminding us of the golden rule. And we definitely want to, part of TJAG's mission is to, raise ethical 21st century leaders. So appreciate you foot stomping on that point that, how we want to be treated. We definitely need to seek that out of those we love, those we come across, those we engage with. And I also just want to remind students who are on the call that we are taking student questions in the Q&A section. So at any time a question pops into your head, feel free to throw that in the Q&A section and we will weave it into our conversation this evening. And you
turn on a light here, so my apologies that it's getting darker and darker and it's not in my house. So I have no idea how to turn this thing on that's right in front of me. But anyway, I apologize.
No worries. My daughter got me on this whole ring light thing, so I think they're
unfortunately, at this point, I'm trying to just figure out how to turn this light that'll help me. But I'm talking about illuminate, and it reminded me that it's getting darker and darker in this room. But please go ahead. Oh, I just figured it out. Okay.
Woo! All right. So please tell us more about the establishment of the Hispanic Heritage Foundation, whose idea it was to start the organization, and what was its original intended mission?
So originally, the Hispanic Heritage Foundation, well, it started as the Hispanic Heritage Awards, and that's the one piece that I inherited, which was at the White House under the Reagan administration. They were taking Hispanic Heritage Week and turning it into Hispanic Heritage Month. So that's the historical context of the Hispanic Heritage Awards, which are still on, and it's a TV show, which, by the way, is being submitted as for an Emmy. And I'm very proud of being the executive producer of that show. We honored Latino leadership across different areas. We actually did a tribute with an ally recognition for John Lewis this year, which I was very proud of. But we also honored Bad Bunny, and not just for being a cultural icon and a current superstar, but because of his work in with the trans community. We honored Selena Gomez, not just because she's a huge megastar as a singer and actor and business person, but we did it because of her work in terms of dealing with mental health issues and bringing to light how everyone struggles, especially during this time. We honor Jessica Alba, the actress, for being a business person, and she talked about getting her GED and not even graduating from high school, but yet running this company and the dynamics of being a Latina doing this. And we honored Linda Ronstadt, who was talked out of being too Mexican, and she was Mexican. And then we also recognized the role of and heroism of farm workers juxtaposed with those superstars. And also Sebastian Yatra, who is a young superstar. We wanted to make sure that everybody understood how important it was to have those inspirational role models among youth. So that's the Hispanic Heritage Awards. They're now on the 34th year, very proud of them. But I actually worked on the Hispanic Heritage Foundation, and Esther worked with me on those early on, because what I wanted to do was focus not just on the Hispanic Heritage Awards, which is a great program that we do and We're very proud of it, but also on education, the workforce, culture, and social justice. And with that, we've been able to teach 100,000 kids how to code all over the country, leveraging our network to do it in English and in Spanish. We've been able to work on an institute for DACA recipients. We've been able to do these charlas on every issue you could imagine, including right after George Floyd was murdered, we were able to do one on how we can be better allies as Latinx to the Black community, including to our own Afro-Latinx community. That Zoom got over 3,000 people on it, and we had also some celebrities that were on there as well to address these issues. So I'm very proud of being almost amoeba-like. You know, we're very malleable. We listen to our community. We get inspired by our community, by young people that give us ideas in terms of what we can do next. And it's a very powerful thing when people say, "Oh, you're a Latino leader." And I'm like, no. I follow our community. It's the other way around. It's not me leading anybody. It's us being led and me being led by our community. And I never lose sight of that. The person I'm talking to knows more than I do about being themselves. And so it's important that we use open space and Kiva process and other ways of having young people have a voice and give us guidance. And on policy side, gathering that data, those ideas, and presenting it as policy guidelines. So the answer is in our youth. And I have to tell you that my 15-year-old daughter with access to Wi-Fi and a computer or a phone has the opportunity to reach more people than Cesar Chavez, Gandhi, and Martin Luther King in a lifetimes combined in a split second. And there's power right now in everyone that's out in this audience and everyone that's your age. We just have to be able to provide some sort of support. And a lot of times the support is simply confidence. You can do so much with confidence, and the ability to be able to break things if you're going to create things. You know, be impatient with your activism. I know everybody tells you, calm down, wait your turn, aguántate. Even when people tell you you're the next generation of leaders, you don't have to wait another generation. You lead right now. And it's such a passive aggressive way of people from my generation telling someone to, you know, slow their roll and to wait their turn. No, you don't have to wait anybody's turn. And in terms of activism too, there's the word act is in activism. You need to be actionable. You need to be impatient. You need to be impetuous. You need to be reckless in order to get things done and to have change, social change. And we're counting on you.
I'm really glad you bring that up. It actually reminds me of the Parkland students and how they pivoted so quickly from, you know, the trauma that they experienced to their activism. And everyone was impressed with this youth-led movement that actually did more for the conversation than, you know, decades of lobbying. And I also love that you mentioned how these celebrities, the Bad Bunny and Selena Gomez, yes, they're known for singing and rapping and whatnot, but no matter what career field you're in, you can always advocate while you're doing it. You can always take on a cause, even if you play basketball, or you can do community work while being in business. So I really appreciate you for highlighting those particular individuals. And I recognize that the Hispanic Heritage Awards also has the Foundation's Youth Awards. So can you tell us more about the awards program for the youth, to include the categories and how many awards are usually given out each year?
Yeah, the youth awards are the basis for everything else we do. The fellows that are teaching our Code as Second Language program are past youth awardees for the most part. When we have a program using video gaming to address social issues, the pool that we tap is mostly the youth awards. When we place people into internships and full-time positions, they're past youth awardees. And after 22 years, that age group is between 15 and 37 now. We're also able to connect them in an ecosystem where they support each other and are mentors, just like your alumni group. It's important that that connectivity is there. So the Youth Awards have been around, and we get about 30,000 applicants this year from all over the country. We select them based on their accomplishments in the classroom, in the community, so they have to be well-rounded, and then their attention to specific categories. And those categories include everything from healthcare, engineering, entrepreneurship, finance, media and entertainment, public policy, thanks to our friends from Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute. We also have a category now for social justice, which is very important, thanks to our friends from Nike, my old company. And then we also have, which is very important, education. Look, in every one of these categories, including computer science, which is another big category, there is a shortage of talent in every one of these categories in their fields, not just for people studying them. So this is the value that we present as community members and as people of color and other underrepresented communities, including females. It's really important that we're able to create these pipelines that then we can feed, because America can't go forward without us. We're the majority right now in schools. But educators, for instance, you have 1 out of 4 students is Latino, and yet it's only like 7%, under 7% of teachers are. So we need to be able to, in every single industry, including in education, be able to boost that, because those companies are better able to market, to serve, to create products if you have representation. So it's important that we continue to identify that representation. You're going to tell me, even right now with the vaccine rollout, where Black and Latinx are being hospitalized at over 3 times the rate as Caucasians are, and are dying at over 2.5 times the rate, yet are getting a fraction of the vaccines. That's why you need representation in the public policy space in looking at equity in the rolling out of the vaccines and who is being prioritized. So that is the importance of what you're doing here through this speaker series and through the School of Public Policy, is that you actually affect that in a macro level that then goes down to that micro level.
Absolutely. So you mentioned some of the categories. I think there's like 10 total, right? 10 total categories. And then there's like 3 regions, or is it?
There's 10 regions. There's 10 regions, but they represent all 50 states plus Puerto Rico. I mean, we had kids applying from Alaska, from Hawaii, from every corner of this country, because there's talent everywhere. When I hear people say, oh, there's a dearth of talent. Yeah, there's a dearth of hamburger meat if you're in a vegetarian restaurant. So it just depends on where you're looking. And we're very fortunate, after having done this for 22 years, that the talent finds us and we're able to then connect them to the appropriate channels.
Thank you for that analogy. So on these awardees, like, can you tell us about some of the awardees that have impacted or inspired you the most?
I mean, it's overwhelming, and it's every single day. I was on the phone just now, and I'm not kidding you, today, with a young woman who won our award, I think like 13 years ago, and is now, after having gone to undergrad and grad school in the area of human sexuality and human health, is now creating products that are cleaner for feminine hygiene in a very nuanced way, specific to the Latinx community. Somebody else was talking about looking into the genealogy, I guess is the term he used, for the indigenous side of our makeup as Latinos, that we are European and indigenous, and often of African descent or of Asian descent, and how does that work in terms of better treating our communities, in terms of being more likely to have diabetes, or 3 times more likely to have non-alcohol related liver issues. There's somebody else named Sofia Sanchez Maez that was one of the coders for the Mars rover at 16 years old. And she's now getting her PhD from Harvard University at 22 years old. And at the same time, she's a fierce advocate on behalf of the LGBTQ plus community, females in STEM. And so that's what I love about it, is that intellect, that innovation, and that social justice side to what makes this young woman. Another young man has been featured in Forbes over and over again, Richie Serna, for his company that is revolutionizing the fintech space. Another one of our youngsters is now the chief blockchain officer for PayPal at 29 years old. I mean, I can go on. We actually have 6 past youth awardees that are on my board. So they're my bosses, including our chairman, Emmanuel Pleitas. So that's how much faith that we have in these alumni. And they're actually my bosses now and giving us guidance in terms of where to go as an organization. But you don't have to be on the board. Anybody out there right now can reach out to us and give us an idea, and we will look at it in terms of being able to better serve our community.
Awesome. You shared so much with the youth that for those that are still kind of like on the fence, you know, with what they can do at their age or in their station, what advice do you have for youth who may feel like they're too young to have an impact on their community when they encounter something they feel isn't right?
You have an advantage of being young. You had an advantage of technology. You have a bigger voice than anyone has ever had. When George Floyd was murdered, I came home from work and all 3 of my kids had hand-drawn Black Lives Matter signs taped to their window. During Pride, every one of my kids is showing their support of our GLBTQ brothers, sisters, and binary siblings through their actions, by posting on TikTok, by posting on Instagram and other ways. You have platforms that we've never had before. The time is right now to act in any way that you want to act. There is nothing too big or too small that you can do. I don't care if there's a piece of garbage in the park. By picking it up, you're an activist, and you're acting, and you're having an impact on this world. That, believe me, when you look at the reports of the fires and the weather seemingly being so erratic, there's a reason for it. It's global warming, it's climate change. And by picking up a piece of garbage at the park, you're actually making an impact.
I love how you make activism so accessible. Speaking to accessibility, this is actually an audience question. What are the greatest political, societal, and psychological obstacles to narrowing the bandwidth equity gap?
Did they really just ask that? Somebody must have Googled this, because I've written about this. No, we have a real issue, and it was made worse during the pandemic. We already had something that's been called the homework gap or the digital divide. I call it the tech equity gap. If you notice, when I said earlier that my daughter and high school students right now have the potential for a greater impact than those iconic lifetimes combined of people like Martin Luther King and Chavez and Gandhi, well, it doesn't work if you don't have access to Wi-Fi, if you don't have access to broadband. And let me just tell you, we have lost a year in education and workforce preparedness. There are 3 million kids that stopped Zooming in for their classrooms. You remember in our time, it was called latchkey kids. Well, those latchkey kids at least got fed twice and got taught all day before going home to an empty house. 5 out of 6 Latinos can't work from home. So those kids are there all home all day long trying to figure out how to get on. And if they can't get on, they can't learn. I wrote an article that said that I wrote that that there's no vaccine for the educational crisis of 2020. And it's going to be a lot more difficult to come back from than our health and economic crises that we've seen over the last year. So that is a huge issue, and it's an equity issue. You can't mobilize if you don't have access to the internet, and we need to get more creative with it. Being able to figure out how to provide hotspots for families, being able to wire buses so that people have access to it, especially in rural areas, because we also need to create, to be content creators. I tell my kids, I will spend anything and you guys can do anything as long as you're creating and not just consuming. So it's important that we have creators out there because we need that content. We need that inspiration. We need your vision to come to life, and technology is the easiest way to do that. You are at a disadvantage if you don't have access to that technology.
I hope my kids heard you. They're in the other room. And I tell them that all the time. Like, all three are listening in, and we always like, make something, create something. You have access to so many resources. What are you doing with your time here on Earth? Someone asked how they can access the tribute to John Lewis that you mentioned earlier.
Oh my goodness. If there's anybody from my team on here, post it. It's beautiful. It's a Puerto Rican singer of Afro-Latinx descent singing Amazing Grace in the most beautiful way. And it is a tribute to John Lewis. In that same show, we also had a beautiful tribute to the families that were lost and their lives lost coming across the border. It was a Mexican altar that was built in a field, and Jesse Reyes sings a beautiful song. So it's on YouTube. If you look up Hispanic Heritage Awards PBS and the entire show, don't do the pre-show, the other one. I think two pop up, but it'll be under 33rd, I think, Hispanic Heritage Awards. Otherwise, I will then send it over to someone. But I would love for all of you to see it. In fact, I would love to have it on this as I close out, because it really is beautiful. I got awesome. It's amazing when you're producing something and when you watch it, it makes you emotional. And having known John Lewis in some way, it was our way of saying, thank you, sir. And thank you going forward. Not just thank you for what you've done. Thank you for the legacy that you're providing all of us that are on this call, but especially our community that needs allies. And they're not really allies. We need supporters. We need accomplices, not just in sound, but in action. And John Lewis was that guy.
Indeed, he was. And Esther saved us. She put the link in the chat for everyone. So we will absolutely close on that. And another question is, what can we do to help families that are separated at the border besides talking to politicians? Something more hands-on. Do you have any suggestions or recommendations?
It's a very difficult situation, and I'm very worried that we're going to see more of the same, because we need to continue as relieved as a lot of us were after the last 4 years. We need to continue to advocate. We cannot give anyone a pass, because this is for the sake of children that are separated from their families, which to me is one of the worst crimes you can do against humanity. However, they're very difficult situations, and we're going to see the border situation arise. It's already, I think it's tripled over the last few weeks, and there's now unaccompanied minors that are coming over here. That policy has to be in a humane way, which I have confidence that the Biden administration will do it in a humane way. But in terms of trying to find 5,500 or 6,000 that were separated before, Um, it is simply being able to come up with the right tracking, the reunification process, which I said earlier, in my experience, was not an easy one. This won't be easy as well. And so it really has to be handled in a very delicate manner. But it's not just those 5,500 or 6,000. It's bigger than that. It's what's going to happen, not just pulling them, connecting them together again. How are you going to deal with this going forward? How can you pull back on some of the draconian, inhumane practices of the last 4 years? And before then, under the Obama administration, was not I don't think, a good policy with the unaccompanied minors either. It was just worse under Trump. So hopefully President Biden and Vice President Harris and that administration will take a real look at it and try to figure out how to address that issue by supporting Central American countries, especially in the Northern Triangle, so that people won't flee for refuge. And also TPS is another policy issue. You have countries that aren't able to take back. Haiti isn't able to absorb the 75,000 that came over here after the horrible tragedies, natural disasters. Nicaragua, where I'm from, is going through a lot right now. You can't just send people back that were protected under TPS because those are now hundreds of thousands of families that'll be separated because children were born over those years. So this is where public policy plays such an important role in changing the landscape, changing the rules, changing the approach to some very difficult situations all over the world, and including on our borders.
Thank you so much for breaking that down for us. So I'm also glad that you gave us the advice to follow our community and not concern ourselves with leading so much. And so I followed my children in an effort to make this more fun based on their feedback from last time. And so we're going to switch things up after I read this last. It was more of a comment than a question, so I wanted to save it for last. But they said, you are the perfect speaker for this series. They said, thank you, Tony, for continuing to give so much leadership, inspiration, and impact.
I'm inspired by that question that they've been asking. I'm inspired by their presence. So don't get it twisted. It's not the other way around. You are inspiring me every single day, and I wish I could be in front of you to meet all of you. But thank you for that. It's very, very powerful to hear that. I try to be, at the very least, authentic in everything I do. And I think there's also a strength in vulnerability. And it's important that we all can talk about issues that we've dealt with in our lives in order to have a stronger connection, in order to understand ourselves better, let alone anybody else. And to be a champion of everyone in the spirit of John Lewis.
Very well said.
Comfort the afflicted.
Yes. So while we get everything set up with Kahoot, if you haven't downloaded the app already, please do so. And I'm sorry. Okay, and there's also a website. So if you didn't download the app, you can also go to kahoot.com. Kahoot it? Oh, kahoot.it. I'm being coached by my son. Thank you. But while we all log in and download Kahoot, let's get into this lightning round. I must let you know that I have friends who are from Nicaragua. I spent some time at San Juan del Sur, so I tried to spice
look
this
at you,
lightning
fancy.
round up.
You went to the beach. Don't act like
bit.
you were in the down part of Nicaragua. You were on
actually,
the beach.
I had to drive there, so we actually got lost because, like, my husband and I were like, we have 4 degrees between us. We can figure this out. And my girlfriend told me straight up, do not drive in Nicaragua at night. I'm like, we're big and bad. We can do this. And it took us 6 hours to get from Managua to San Juan del Sur.
Yeah. Did you go into Costa Rica? Because it's right on the border there.
We didn't, but we were very close. We stayed at this resort called Tree Casa, and it's like a real
I've been to it.
tree.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yes. We stayed in the tree
beautiful.
house. We had like a whole resort to ourselves. Shout out to Miguel if he's watching because we had such a great time.
My dad is still there, and as soon as this crisis is over, I am heading down there to spend time with my dad, and I'm bringing my kids so that they can stay connected to their heritage. But it's a beautiful country, and I'm very proud of being from Nicaragua.
And the people, my God, just kind. Like I said, it took us 6 hours to get there, but the only way we got there in one piece were the beauty of the people. Even trying to tip people who gave us directions, they refused our money and just wanted to make sure that we enjoyed their country. So with that, and you can correct me if I'm butchering any of this, cancho con yaca or nacatamal?
Nacatamal. With a side order of cardiologists, because let me tell you something, that thing will stop your heart while you're eating it. But for those that don't know, it comes in a huge banana leaf, and it's everything from pork mixed in with raisins, with chiles, with potato, with masa, with a little bit of rice in there, and you have olives, and that taste is just so unique and wonderful to Nicaragua. So yeah, I'm a nacatamal all day. In fact, I'm insulted by that question.
Well, my girlfriend, she had my back, so
I'm playing.
I'll have to defend
her.
All right, Apple or Samsung?
Apple.
Mm-hmm. The Washington football team or the Cowboys?
Honestly, that insults me. Washington football team. Geez.
I don't even have a name right now.
I'm a Washingtonian. Good. Well, it's better than the one they had.
Indeed. Amen.
So believe me, that was one of my greatest gifts, is that I can cheer for them again. And they should keep it that way to make up for all those years of a racist name. But no, I am absolutely thrilled with the Washington football team. Went to the playoffs, and let's see what's going to happen next year. But yeah, die hard.
Good. Arroz con leche or pio quito?
That's my childhood thing, arroz con leche, just because I've been eating that since I was a kid, and I'm now craving it right now. And the way you make it with a little of that canela in there, and it's just so special to have that taste. It really is like revisiting your childhood when you take that first bite. It's a comfort. It really is a comfort.
Yeah. Michael Jordan or LeBron James?
Michael Jordan. I love LeBron though. Let me put it this way. In terms of basketball, Michael Jordan. In terms of activism, role model, LeBron James all day. So I'm going to break it down that way, because I'd want my kids to be like LeBron James. So I'll put it that way. But in terms of, you're asking me just straight up a hoop question,
I love it. Jordan. I love it. That was an excellent, thorough answer. Thank you for that. McDonald's or Chick-Fil-A?
I don't eat that homophobic chicken. I'm gonna go with McDonald's.
I'm sorry, we ready to cut. Okay, thank you for that transparency. Maduros or tajadas?
Maduros. And especially if the maduros, you have a little crema on them, or even crumbled salty queso on top of them.
Tell me more.
Oh, just so good.
We're gonna all start like ordering DoorDash after this.
You're not getting Maduro on DoorDash. That stuff's too down home.
I live in Woodbridge. We have.
Oh no, you're getting it. Yeah.
Right,
if you're in Woodbridge, you're gonna get it.
Woodbridge. Yeah. Yes. SUV or sports car?
I got a Prius. So neither. I don't drive those gas guzzlers like Esther does. I got a Prius.
Prius, awesome. And last but not least, TV series or movies?
I am a deep consumer of all content. I watch nonstop. I watch with my kids. I look, and the bonding that you can have when I watched Fruitvale Station with my son, or I watched the documentary on Muhammad Ali, What's My Name, with my 10-year-old daughter, or with my other daughter that we're watching a series, or even movies like Good Will Hunting and other movies. That one's got to be both. That's a tie, because series are so good right now that I'm going to have to go with that being a tie, but might have an edge towards movies only because I've been able to bond with my kids on.
Awesome. So we are now ready for this Kahoot that my kids have been making such a Kahoot about for the past 2 weeks. I will put the game code in the chat, and my son is telling me, can you say hello? Can you say hello?
Hi.
That handsome guy. Stay on, man.
He's here. Take one of my earpieces.
Here's my 10-year-old. Come here, Tita.
He is telling me I have to share my screen. So I'm going to share my screen now.
5 more minutes. Come here, say hi.
All right, and
I'll
let
go
me
turn it on in a
know
minute.
if you all can
I'm
see
almost done.
the screen. Can everyone see the screen and the game pen? All right, we'll give everyone about 2 more minutes to get logged in. Okay. All right, don't you go away because I need you. My tech support's trying to vacate. Nope. All right, is everyone in? I do. All right, so if you were paying attention, you should easily be able to get this Kahoot. It looks like we have 12 players right now. My son is telling me to wait 30 more seconds. And I'm glad that I made each question also 30 seconds. So, correct me if I'm wrong. Once we start this game, you will have 30 seconds to enter your answer for each question. Whoever wins is timed, right? Okay, whoever wins based on correctness and time will get a special Lewis Academy Now swag gift in the mail. So for all our competitors, I'm gonna start in another minute, 30 seconds. We good? Okay. My tech support is up. Nope, we got it. We got more coming in. Got 14 now. That's my number. All right, now the gang's all here. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. And let's Kahoot.
The screen's frozen.
No, this one's not.
No.
Okay, thank you. All right. Antonio was the executive producer of the 2020 Hispanic Heritage Awards. What national network aired the broadcast? 20 seconds.
Stop Googling.
And 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Uh-oh. Only 3 people got it right. It was CBS. And my son's being a show off. Next. My son's in the lead. I think you're cheating. From which country did Antonio immigrate? 25. Oh, this has a nice beat to it. Can you all hear the music too?
No.
Oh, okay.
Exterior sound.
Yeah, this Kahoot thing is like giving me vibes. Three, two, one. Everyone should have gotten that one right. 7. Okay, we've got 7. I'll take it. Nicaragüense.
Puro pinolero.
Hey, everyone can hear you guys. I have competitive kids and they're all like 3 surrounding me right now. So let's see. Next. From which university did Antonio obtain his bachelor's degree? He said it once.
Here's a hint.
Remembered.
We lost to Michigan today in a Big Ten tournament.
Only the sports fanatics will.
And University of Virginia was my backup school where Esther went, so it's not that one.
He's giving you guys a freebie. 2, 1. All right, where are we? Ha ha! 9. Yes.
Tony Terrapin.
And we got 2 more, team. Let's get it. Uh-oh,
What?
Peyton took the lead. It's okay, Zay, you will live. Yes. Next question. What institution established the Hispanic Heritage Foundation in 1987? Did you give up that easily? I have a quitter over here. You should have been paying attention. Uh-oh. Game is on. Competition's getting fierce.
I like how you have OMB.
My son is way too crunk about this. Well, at least it's more fun, which is what they said this would be. Okay. And the next and last question. What is the total number of students selected to receive the Hispanic Heritage Foundation's Youth Awards? Now, we said we weren't going to talk math, Tony, but.
Okay, but I have to say, this would be, the number would be per category. And there are 10 categories. So I just want to make that clear. In case some kid says, 300, they'd be right too. But this is per category and there are 10 categories. And per region. So you can actually have 2 different answers here plus the other one, but 30 is good.
30
so it's 30 per region, and then it's 30 nationally across the different regions because it's 3 per region, per category. Awesome. So anyway,
all right.
Whoever got it, got it. So who won? My kids, by the way, wouldn't have gotten 3 right on this thing.
3, okay. Drum roll. Number 3 is Rashad. Congratulations. Jorge. Muy bien. Y my son. Xavier.
Your son what?
Xavier. All righty. And congratulations
X-Man. Nice
to
work,
our
bro.
winners. Nice job, X-Man. All right. Yes, my son has disqualified himself, so we are going to go with the number 2. Thank you all so much for participating in this series. Tony, your nuggets and wisdom that you've shared with our youth today has been beyond inspiring. I've taken plenty of notes myself for my own inspiration. So I want to thank you again for joining us. Stop sharing right now. And
thank you so much.
Turn it over to Michelle to close us out. Thank you again.
Thank you, Makia.
Thanks, Makia. And thank you, Tony, for sharing your journey, the wisdom you've lived in your life. I really appreciated your emphasis on being a listener to the community that you serve, and also your encouragement to students and young people to not wait to begin to lead change. That really resonated with me, and I think it's really important for all of our students to hear. As a little bit of a closeout about us, we want you all to check out our social media on Facebook, Twitter, our website, email us at info@lewisacademy.now. Our next speaker will be Elizabeth Guzman, and she's a social worker, a public administrator, and a member of the Virginia House of Delegates. So register to join us on March 26th at 6 p.m. I know we have a little bit of video to look at as we finish up, but until then, go in peace, comfort the afflicted, and make good trouble. Thanks, everybody.
Be impatient.
And be impatient.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Dolores Huerta, president of the Dolores Huerta Foundation for Grassroots Community Organizing, and I was blessed to march across the Edmunds Pettus Bridge twice with John Lewis, but even prouder to have locked arms with him when we were fighting for immigration reform, denouncing the separation of families, and ensuring the right to vote. Congressman John Lewis will continue to serve as an inspiration for all of us and for anyone who is in la lucha, in the struggle, and looking for good trouble on behalf of our collective communities. On behalf of the Hispanic Heritage Foundation, it is my great privilege to acknowledge Congressman John Lewis as a very, very special ally for our community. Here to perform a tribute to John Lewis on his impact and his legacy, please welcome Calma Carmona.
But now I'm found. I was blind, but now I see. Was grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear, thou that I believe. Through many dangerous doors and snares, we have already come. was home and grace will lead us home. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. I was blind, but now I see. I was blind, but now I see.